3 weeks ago, Heated Rivalry became the most debated piece of queer media since Brokeback Mountain, and that's not an exaggeration. Heated Rivalry shattered Crave's streaming records, climbed to #1 on HBO Max, and locked down a second season before the first one even finished airing. Critics called it one of the best queer shows ever made, and fans absolutely lost it over something they've dubbed the back-arch herd around the world. But underneath all that success, the show sparked a war. Not about quality, because everyone seems to agree the show delivers. The war centers on something messier: who gets to tell queer stories, what makes representation authentic, and whether any of this actually changes anything in the real world. This is the story of how one hockey romance cracked open every fault line running through LGBTQ media right now. The fight that nearly broke the internet started with a Vulture interview published December 11th. Actor Jordan Firstman sat down to promote his HBO show I Love LA and decided to share his thoughts on Heated Rivalry, calling the show just not gay and claiming the intimate scenes don't reflect how gay men actually behave together. Two straight hockey players pretending to be gay. That's how he described the leads. When the interviewer pointed out that neither Hudson Williams nor Storrie has publicly discussed their sexuality, Firstman doubled down, saying a gay guy would just say he's gay and adding that he doesn't respect people who care too much about their career and what might happen if people think they're gay. The response came fast and brutal. Francois Arnault, who plays Scott Hunter on Heated Rivalry and is openly bisexual, fired back on Instagram, asking whether there's only one way to have authentic gay intimacy on TV, and whether the intimacy that closeted hockey players share should look like what sceney LA gay guys experience. Hudson Williams took a different approach. His Instagram story told people to go watch I Love LA and called Jordan and the cast great. Firstman apologized within 48 hours, posting that he loves Heated Rivalry and admitting he sometimes can't stop talking when he should. A few days later, Firstman and Williams posted a selfie together at a party in Los Angeles, and the hatchet appeared to be buried. The questions Firstman raised didn't disappear though. They've been simmering in queer media discourse for years, and Heated Rivalry just cranked up the temperature. Here's what makes this uncomfortable. Nobody knows if Hudson Williams or Storrie are gay, straight, bisexual, or anything else. Neither actor has publicly discussed their sexuality. And according to Jacob Tierney, the openly gay creator of the show, that's exactly how things should stay. When journalists pressed Tierney about his actors' sexualities during press for the show, he shut it down hard, pointing out that asking about an actor's sexuality during casting is actually illegal in many jurisdictions. What mattered to him was their enthusiasm and willingness to do the work. Both actors impressed him, Tierney explained, because they came in saying they were there to make this story feel authentic and as real as possible, and in his words, they absolutely delivered. Storrie addressed the speculation directly in a Deadline interview, stating that who he dates, who he sleeps with, all of that he's going to keep to himself. But he also said he loves Ilya, loves the community this show caters to, and thinks the project is so much more interesting and valuable than doing just another run-of-the-mill straight story. This creates awkward territory. A legitimate argument exists that queer roles should go to queer actors when possible, since LGBTQ performers have historically been shut out of Hollywood, and when queer stories finally get told, the people who lived those experiences should get to tell them. Demanding actors disclose their sexuality creates its own problems, though. Closeted performers get forced to either out themselves or lose opportunities. The assumption that sexuality is fixed and easily categorized doesn't hold up, and plenty of queer actors have played straight roles without anyone batting an eye, which raises questions about the double standard. Bloomberg ran an opinion piece calling this debate unhealthy and pointing out that it has proven harmful to closeted creatives in the past while enforcing a rigid litmus test for what counts as authentic storytelling. What makes this messier is who's actually behind the show. The creator is openly gay, the source material's author identifies as queer. Francois Arnault, one of the lead supporting actors, is openly bisexual. Harrison Browne, who plays Ilya's teammate Connors, made history as the first openly transgender professional hockey player in North American sports. When people talk about authentic queer storytelling, who exactly is missing from this equation, and who gets to make that call? Speaking of Harrison Browne, his casting deserves way more attention than it's gotten. Episode 4 introduces viewers to Connors, a teammate of Ilya's on the Boston Raiders. The role isn't huge, but it carries weight. Connors has a key moment where he shows Ilya a news article that devastates him. Most casual viewers don't realize Harrison Browne isn't just playing a hockey player, he actually was one. Browne competed in the National Women's Hockey League from 2015 to 2018. And in 2016, he came out publicly as a transgender man, becoming the first openly trans athlete in professional team sports in North America. An Isabel Cup championship with the Buffalo Beauts came in 2017. And hormone therapy had to wait until after retirement because the hormones would have violated anti-doping regulations. When Browne auditioned for Heated Rivalry, he almost didn't get cast, and the reason had nothing to do with his identity. Standing at 5'4", he worried he wouldn't physically read as an NHL player on screen. In an Out magazine interview, Browne talked about the imposter syndrome he felt, not feeling masculine enough or big enough for the role, but the second he stepped on set, he knew he belonged. The casting process struck him most because Tierney never treated his trans identity as a checkbox. Browne heard hands down that they got him because he's a good actor and an amazing hockey player, not because he's trans. That affirmation meant everything. This is what authentic representation can actually look like. Not demanding actors disclose personal information, but creating an environment where diverse performers bring their full selves to the work without that being the only reason they're hired. Rachel Reid has faced her own version of the authenticity debate for years, and the show's success brought it roaring back. Reid is a woman married to a man who wrote a series of explicit romance novels about gay male hockey players. For some critics, that's disqualifying. They argue someone outside the community shouldn't be writing romantic and sexual content about gay men. The counter-arguments carry equal passion. Reid identifies as queer, though she's never publicly specified beyond that. In a Globe and Mail interview, she explained that some of the feedback she's gotten is that for a lot of women they have a hard time enjoying romance if it involves a woman, sometimes based on their own difficult past experiences. For women still attracted to men, it can be a nice escape to not have a character you relate to yourself. Tierney offered another angle, pointing out that there's something about women being drawn to male vulnerability that isn't present in male-female romance, where male roles tend to be more classic, masculine and stoic, while male-male romance contains much more vulnerability. Reid herself has been remarkably open about her motivations. She told Wired that when it comes to representation, she understands the need to address critiques and is willing to incorporate feedback into her future work, especially when representing a demographic she's not part of. She also clarified that she's using these books to work out some thoughts about men and masculinity. Hockey serves as the backdrop not because she's attracted to hockey players, but because she knows a lot about the sport and it provides rich ground for exploring toxic masculinity. The Game Changers books have a complicated origin story involving fan fiction, which makes the conversation even more interesting. Reid started drafting what would become the first book, Game Changer, in 2016 while raising children and working her day job. Nerves plagued her because she'd never shown anyone something she'd written before. Archive of Our Own, known as AO3, became her testing ground to ease her anxieties about writing a novel for the first time. The twist came when Reid realized she thought you had to post fanfic on AO3, not knowing original work was allowed. She adapted her original novel into an alternate universe fic where Steve Rogers, the superstar captain of the New York Rangers, falls in love with Bucky Barnes, a barista at a smoothie shop in Manhattan. The Scott Hunter storyline was temporarily framed as Marvel fanfic, even though that's not how it started. Reid has been candid about her complicated feelings on this. She told Salon she desperately wishes she'd never posted that fanfiction, calling it bad and embarrassing. Guilt hit her about removing it from AO3 too, which she called really bad fanfic author behavior because people gave her lovely feedback and then she just took it away to make money. Strong feedback pushed her forward, and by the end of 2016, Reid took the story off AO3, removed the Marvel elements and submitted her manuscript to publishers. Her publisher told her it sounded a little fanficky, requiring major revisions. What makes this fascinating is how it complicates the authenticity narrative. Fan fiction has historically been a space where women, particularly queer women, explored male-male relationships. Literary gatekeepers have dismissed it for decades, and now a story that was once posted on AO3 as alternate universe Marvel fic has become one of the most acclaimed queer television adaptations in years. The HBO Max darkening controversy deserved way more attention than it received. Shortly after Heated Rivalry premiered, American viewers started noticing something strange. The HBO Max version looked significantly darker than the Canadian version streaming on Crave. Fans compared screenshots, and the differences were obvious. The timing of the darkest scenes seemed suspicious too, corresponding exactly with the intimate moments between Shane and Ilya. Speculation spread that HBO Max had intentionally altered the footage to obscure the romantic scenes. Given the current political climate around LGBTQ content, the assumption wasn't crazy. Tierney addressed it directly, calling it just a mistake and saying there was no controversy. HBO Max bought the show and put it on the air within about 3 weeks, creating a lot of panic to get things going, and he believes it was simply an error. The show's cinematographer actually noticed first, calling Tierney to ask why it looked so dark. Tierney talked to HBO right away, and they worked to fix it. What this incident reveals is telling. The fact that fans immediately assumed censorship shows the trust levels between streaming platforms and LGBTQ audiences. Enough history of queer content being sanitized, edited, or buried exists that suspicion becomes the default response. Even if this particular case turned out to be a technical error, the conversation it sparked was real. People genuinely feared that even after all the progress, their stories would still be hidden in the shadows. The elephant in the room is whether any of this matters outside entertainment media. Brock McGillis has strong opinions on that question. McGillis holds the distinction of being the first openly gay professional hockey player. Coming out happened in 2016, after retiring from a career that included several seasons in the Ontario Hockey League and the United Hockey League. Advocating for LGBTQ inclusion in hockey became his mission after that. When former NHL player Sean Avery suggested Heated Rivalry's success could help encourage future hockey players to come out, McGillis disagreed hard, saying he wholeheartedly rejects that idea. The show, he argued, is probably more likely to have an adverse effect on a player coming out. He admitted he hates being negative because he really enjoys the show, but he doesn't believe many hockey bros will watch it, and if they are watching, they're probably not talking about it positively. McGillis pointed to the evidence. Nobody jumped out of the closet when he came out in 2016. Nobody came out when Luke Prokop, the first NHL prospect to come out while under contract, made his announcement in 2021. The first episode of Heated Rivalry gave McGillis a panic attack, he admitted, because it brought back memories of keeping his own relationship secret. For 3 years he dated a guy without a soul in his life, knowing they had an alias for him in his boyfriend's phone in case friends ever saw it. The context that makes McGillis's skepticism sting is this. The NHL remains the only major North American men's sports league with no out current or former players. Baseball has had them. Basketball has had them. Football has had them. Soccer has had them. Hockey has had 0. The Professional Women's Hockey League has 30 out queer players this year alone. Luke Prokop, who came out in 2021, still plays in the minors for the Bakersfield Condors, an affiliate of the Edmonton Oilers. At 23, if he ever makes the NHL, he'll be the first. McGillis argues that homophobia in hockey is normalized, starting at a very young age and progressing through your whole life. The language, behaviors, and attitudes in locker rooms are sometimes homophobic, and players get programmed to feel that everyone will hate them and they'll lose their career. Sometimes people don't recognize what they're saying or the impact it has, but hearing it daily amounts to death by 1,000 paper cuts. A show about gay hockey players is breaking streaming records. Critics praise it as historic queer representation. The authenticity debates it sparked are genuinely advancing how we think about who gets to tell stories. And the first openly gay professional hockey player says it probably won't change anything in actual hockey locker rooms. That gap between cultural progress and lived reality deserves more examination, though. McGillis might be right that Heated Rivalry won't convince a closeted NHL player to come out. The hockey bros who need their minds changed probably aren't watching. Representation on screen might not translate directly to safety in a locker room. But here's what keeps coming back. Hudson Williams revealed he played Shane as autistic, and author Reid confirmed that Shane is on the spectrum. Williams said his dad is on the spectrum and that he took a huge page out of living his life with him when approaching the character. Fans noticed before any official confirmation came. They pointed to Shane folding his clothes before intimate moments, commenting on a dirty bed afterward, his need for routines, his rules about food, the ginger ale. They saw themselves in those details. One fan wrote on Twitter that seeing a queer autistic character on screen like them means the world. Another said they love seeing themselves in characters. This is what representation actually does, though not always in big dramatic change-the-world ways. Sometimes it works quieter than that. Someone sees a character who thinks the way they think, struggles with what they struggle with, loves the way they love, and feels a little less alone. Will that help the next closeted NHL player come out? Maybe not directly. But that kid who loves hockey and knows he's different, who's been told his whole life the locker room isn't for people like him, might see Shane Hollander folding his clothes, being particular about his routines, falling in love with someone he's supposed to hate, and something might shift. The next Luke Prokop might not be watching Heated Rivalry, but he might be growing up in a world where this show exists, where these stories get told, where the debate isn't whether queer hockey players should be on screen, but how authentically they're being portrayed. That's progress. Slow, frustrating, incomplete progress, but progress. Reid wrote Heated Rivalry on her iPad while putting her kids to sleep and submitted it to publishers without telling her husband. During the show's premiere week, the book finally hit the New York Times bestseller list. She told a story about her mom going to the local Indigo bookstore and asking if they had any copies of her books, only to discover they'd never heard of her. That's her reality, she said, and it still feels surreal that the #1 book in the Kindle store is a sexually explicit gay hockey romance. Tierney read one Washington Post article about the romance book industry and knew immediately he had to be the one to adapt this story. Keeping the intimate scenes intact became a fight he won because he understood they weren't gratuitous. They were character development. They were how Shane and Ilya learn about themselves and each other. Williams described his chemistry read with Connor's Storrie as having an inexplicable X factor that just felt realer than what he thought possible. Fans called their on-screen dynamic bonkers, and Reid said what Williams does with his face tells a whole story. And Brock McGillis, who dated a man for 3 years without anyone knowing, who had to create an alias to hide in plain sight, says the show gave him a panic attack because it hit too close to home. All of these things are true at the same time. A show can be groundbreaking and insufficient. Representation can matter enormously and still not be enough. Celebrating progress while acknowledging how far we still have to go is not a contradiction. Season 2 is already greenlit and will adapt The Long Game, the 6th book in the Game Changers series continuing Shane and Ilya's story. The authenticity debates will continue. Someone will write another think piece about who gets to tell queer stories. Another actor will be asked to disclose their sexuality, and the conversation will circle back around. But right now, somewhere, a kid who never thought he'd see himself in a hockey player is watching Shane Hollander fall in love. A woman who always felt weird about enjoying romance novels is reading Reid without shame. A closeted athlete is seeing that people are fighting to tell his story even if the locker room still isn't safe. The authenticity wars won't find a clean resolution, and they probably never will. But the fact that we're having them loudly, publicly, with this much passion means something. Heated Rivalry didn't answer all the questions about queer representation, but it made sure we're asking better ones. The finale airs December 26th. Season 2 is on the way.